there, we're back with more from the Developer Innovation Day. I'm A.M. Grabelny, your host. You've seen me all day. You know me. You maybe love me, probably not, but maybe we'll change that. I don't know. My co-host, please introduce yourself.
My name is Farrah Campbell, and I actually love you. I'm enjoying this today.
See, this is what I do. I fish for compliments on a live stream, and people feel the need to boost my self-esteem. Thank you, Farrah.
You're welcome.
We've got, and most importantly, our guest over here. Kendra, please tell the people about yourself.
Well, hi, I'm Kendra Neal. I am an engineer with the Amazon Cloud Development Kit team, and I'm not yet sure how I feel about you.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I would reserve judgment for a long time, actually. You need to collect a lot of data here. We've been talking a lot of things today. We've been doing a lot of mobile front end in the morning. We've moved over to a bit of some DevOps, I'd say, in the afternoon. We talked CDK already. We learned a little bit about it, but we're getting deep into CDK now, right? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. I'm gonna just kick us off, Kendra.
All right. So I am going to briefly start with an introduction to the CDK, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, and then we'll talk about our wider ecosystem. We'll cover how to find constructs published by AWS and by the community, and how you can publish your own constructs using our toolchain. There we go. So if you've been watching for long, you have seen this image earlier today. Brief introduction, the AWS Cloud Development Kit is an open source software development framework to model and provision your cloud application resources. So you can do this in the programming language of your choice, assuming that your choice is either TypeScript or JavaScript for Node, C# or F# for .NET, Python, Java, or Go. So no more JSON or YAML, and instead you're using classes, functions, loops, etc. Whatever your language of choice, being one of those, has built into it. Additionally, in your IDE, you'll have all the tooling support for that language, including autocomplete and inline documentation, which we all need all the time.
Yes. This was actually something we got into a little bit with chat. We were talking, some people in chat were like, well, I use Terraform, why do I need CDK, right? And some of the things that were brought up were, you get the things that you get with a programming language, right? You get things like unit testing. You get things like, which exist in Terraform as well. There's TerraTest, things like that. But I love this, the IntelliSense, right? Like you're listing out some more of the things that I'd say exist on top of a declarative thing like YAML or even Terraform, right? Which CDK works with Terraform too. Yeah,
I will mention that later. I like to think that we kind of bring together the best of both worlds with declarative and imperative programming. And what this all adds up to is reusable abstractions and testable components for your infrastructure. So we do this all through constructs and construct libraries. And let me take a few minutes to talk about what exactly constructs are. There's just a couple prerequisites that I'm going to cover to ensure that we're all on the same page, since, again, users of all levels. So say I need to provision a simple Fargate service. AWS Fargate is a serverless cloud compute service that you can run tasks on, either on a schedule or on a trigger of some sort. And here are all the components that would require. So assuming that you want to provision this with code, and assuming that you're not yet a CDK user, you'd likely use CloudFormation, a template, which would look something like this.
Reasonable. Yeah, totally reasonable.
It contains 50 resources, 22 resource types, 97 refs, and 1,323 lines of code. And I know it's obviously too small for to see the individual lines here, but let's drill down into where this all comes from. So we can discover the resources that we need and their properties because CloudFormation publishes a specification for all resources. It's open to the public. You can go look at it. Links at the bottom there. So here's an overview of that structure. And we can drill down into the resource details here and the details of each property type. So that's what we're using here to define all of these resources so that we can get our Fargate service up and running. Keep this image in mind. Moving on to information specific to the CDK. So when you initialize a new project, this creates an app. So your project as a whole or your service as a whole both your infrastructure and the application code live together here. So apps contain one or more stacks. And these are just logical units of infrastructure, like how you would have separated your YAML templates out before. And CDK stacks are mapped one-to-one with CloudFormation stacks. The example I showed earlier would be one stack. So the resources are the items themselves being deployed, such as your S3 bucket, your pipeline, your DynamoDB table. And finally, constructs are more or less a class in object-oriented terms. They're the basic building blocks of apps. So a construct can represent a single AWS resource, such as an SQS queue, a Lambda function, or an S3 bucket. Or it can be a higher level abstraction consisting of multiple related resources. For instance, your SQS construct could include a Lambda function construct as a trigger for that queue. Composition is the key pattern for defining higher level abstractions through constructs, and a high level construct can be made of any number of lower level constructs. In fact, stacks and apps are also constructs. Pretty much anything that you're going to interact with in the CDK is a construct. So for every CloudFormation resource that exists, we use that resource specification to automatically generate L1 constructs for each of the programming languages I mentioned earlier. And these are one-to-one mappings between classes and AWS resources, and are basically just a type-checked version of writing CloudFormation templates, just in whichever programming language you decide to use. Luckily, though, now that we're dealing with code instead of templates, we can provide higher-level abstractions. So let's look back at this diagram. If you're using L1s, you still need to know each of the components needed here. But you can now use loops, conditions, and other logic to not have to write out each and every component individually. But there is, of course, more we can do here. We know that some of these components always require other ones to function, or have certain configurations that we see most of the time. So we could just build that abstraction. We call these L2 constructs. L2 constructs are handwritten, higher-level constructs that are somewhat opinionated as to how users usually use the service and define the resources there within. And for many of these, it's a composition of multiple resources, and they can include convenience functions like granting permissions, adding metrics, logs, etc. Using L2 constructs, this is basically the amount of information we need to know to build that same Fargate service. So lots is now built in. And this is the code in its entirety that it would require to create it. As a side note, this took me like 5 minutes. And it'll produce the exact same resources as that YAML template that I showed earlier. Even here, though, we still know that there's typical patterns of use that we see again and again, this being one of them. This is an application load-balanced Fargate service.
My favorite construct, actually.
Is it really?
It is, yeah. And we were talking about it earlier, and I actually had to break out of it. I was doing 2 Fargate services under the same load balancer, which is not what that construct is built to do necessarily. And so I couldn't use it in one of these instances, and I missed it so much.
Yeah.
It's just such a nice construct.
Well, then you had to write all of this.
I know, yeah, that's what I had.
Instead of.
It's still not. It's still much better than writing the CloudFormation like template. Like,
Oh yeah. Well, this brings me to L3 constructs. These are highly opinionated abstractions that come with multiple services, or combine multiple services rather, and typical patterns of use. This is what that exact same thing looks like as an L3. It's the same set of resources across the board, including what was in that YAML template. And if this took me more than 2 minutes, then I don't know what I was doing. So now that we know what constructs are, how do you go about finding the ones that are available to you? Let's go here. And, oops, there we go. OK, so there we are. The majority of constructs live in the AWS CDK library, and this landing page is a very handy path to most of our ecosystem. Not quite all of it, but most.
I live in these docs a lot of the time too, and they're very nice. Like I have to compliment.
Oh, thank you.
All. Like it is one of the top tier doc sites in my opinion. We saw another one of my favorites. I mean, not that anybody cares about my opinion, but Amplify docs also I think are very, very good docs in terms of AWS docs.
Yeah.
Love the CDK docs.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
From here you can see some information about the library itself, and on the side we have a list of every single module that exists. As I mentioned earlier, the L1s are all automatically generated, so if the CloudFormation resource exists, so does the CDK construct. For each module, you can, that's the one I want, whoops, let me scroll down here. So on the side here, you can see every single construct that exists, the non-construct things we've built to support our constructs, and then down at the very bottom here, there's a lot in this one.
There's a few of them. There's a few constructs there.
Just a couple. Down at the bottom here, you can see the L1 constructs and the property types. These ones are auto-generated, and you will always know which ones are auto-generated because they start with this CFN prefix. So if it starts with that, L1, auto-generated. Everything else, somebody has built by hand, either us or one of our community members. So you can also see all of the languages it's available in, just some details about how to use it. If you want to see the documentation in another language, you just click on that language, and there you go. And if you want to see the source code, you can do that. Whoops, that's not the right package. Directly in GitHub. We are in the AWS organization, and our repo is AWS CDK. So if there's something where there's just an L1 construct and there's not an L2, or we're missing a property or whatever, you can come here and submit us a pull request.
You're getting recognized in chat, actually, as pull request approver. So they already know you, Kendra.
Yeah, part of my introduction originally was going to be, I'm the real Amazon Kendra, and you probably know me by me saying, I think we need more tests. If you have submitted a pull request and I haven't said that, congratulations. Anyway, so returning to our doc site here, we also have many, many, many constructs that were built by the community. You can find most of those here on Construct Hub. Oops, there we go. So you can filter by language, by resource provider, by use case, and a whole bunch more ways. And you may have noticed here, and also as you mentioned, we don't just have CDK for AWS, we also have it for Kubernetes and for Terraform. So we're going to go ahead and search for
the community side too, Fair. This sounds like maybe something that you have experience with our heroes and community builders.
Yeah, that have written a book about it. I think they're planning CDK Day coming up again, 2023. Yeah.
Yeah.
I may or may not be on that committee. So.
So here's a construct library that I built and submitted. You can see that it's community here. This will tell you the author, whether it's AWS, Terraform, whomever, the organization rather, and then the author here, that's me. And you'll notice that the documentation here looks an awful lot like what exists in our docs website, and that's because we use the same sets of tools to generate them. You can also see that this is in all of the languages that we offer. So now that, here we go. So now that I have shown these, let's take a look at how to actually get your own construct library on Construct Hub. I'm going to walk you through the process of vending your own constructs, like I did. We provide an ecosystem of tools that handle a lot of this process for you. So let's go ahead and switch. There we go. Oh, whoops. I went there too soon. First, we will actually talk about a couple of these tools. There we go. So the first of these that I'm going to cover is Progen. Progen is a tool for defining and maintaining project configuration through code. We'll take a closer look at Progen in just a few minutes.
We talked Progen with Harry and team when we're talking through Code Catalyst, which
Ah,
they're
yeah.
using Progen for blueprints.
Yeah, so because our tools are open source, they are used much more widely than just our team. So, if you find uses for any of these in your organizations, have at them. So the second tool is JSII. JSII allows code from other languages to naturally interact with JavaScript classes. This is how we're able to write all of our code in TypeScript and then vend it in the many other languages with full automation of that language translation. So here's a little bit of a JSII in action. Consider the following TypeScript class: simple greeter class with one function, greet. So by compiling our source code using JSII, we can package it in as a module in any of the supported target languages with the exact same API as the source. This allows users of those languages to use greeter class just like any other language type. The JSII compiler does impose some restrictions on TypeScript features that can be used to ensure that the APIs can be consistently represented in other languages. For example, union types, not currently supported. So now let's go ahead and create a project using Progen and go through the steps that you would need to do to publish your construct. Back there. All right. OK, so I am going to start by just making a folder with the name of the library that I'm going to publish. We're going to keep it really simple today. Construct lib. Whoops. Creativity at its finest. All right, so now the first command we're going to use is npx, and that just means that you don't have to download or install Progen separately. It all happens in one. So to create a new project, we'll do npx new, Progen, sorry, new AWS CDK construct. All right, so that's going to take a few minutes to set up because it's also going to install a bunch of our dependencies and whatnot. But let's take a quick look at what was created. So we have a number of GitHub workflows that are created for build, pull request linting, release, auto upgrades. There's also this Progen folder that stores a lot of configuration. And then node modules are just your dependencies here. The source and the test folder, source and test. And then there's this Progen RC file, which is arguably the most important in this whole thing. So anytime that you run npx Progen, yarn Progen, or any build command, your configuration will be updated to what is written in this file. This will always be your source of truth. So let's go ahead and get this set up. I'm going to minimize this a little bit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I prefer to use TypeScript because I like the type checking. So I'm going to add.
Type for life.
I was gonna say, you're like, there, you guys are friends now. Like,
Type
that's
for
it, that's
life.
it.
And we were talking TypeScript earlier with Michael, and type is life. It's
All right, so we're going to put this to make this true. And then I will synthesize this by doing yarn Progen. And a bunch of these folders are going to turn yellow because it's updating all of our configuration to work with TypeScript instead. Of course, now it will be looking for a TypeScript file here and not a JavaScript one. So I will rename this. There we go. All good. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is adjust the, go back, thank you. Here we are, adjust the CDK version here. So setting the minimum CDK lib version here is going to pin the version in the library's dev dependencies and require a minimum of this version in the library's peer dependencies. So this means that any other package that uses this library as a dependency is going to require that version or above for the CDK lib. So let's pretend that our construct library relies on a feature released in 2.50.0. And actually, before I make any further changes here, no, I'll do this too. Also, this would be the time where you'd probably want to make this GitHub repository if you were doing this for real, but for the purposes of this demo, I'm not actually going to. So let's save our changes, or commit our changes so that it's easier to see what changes it's making going forward. Oops, add. There we go. OK, so now that I've made those two changes, I'm going to do yarn progen again.
I love the compulsory commit message, by the way. I just like, you have to, right?
Yes.
If it's the initial commit, you have to call it initial commit.
I mean, I think you should. Well, yes, that one is too. I was going to say, do you ever not write commit messages?
Oh, no, I mean.
We would need to talk about that.
On a first commit message, initial commit is the traditional.
Yeah. All right, so you'll see that in package here, it's going to have upgraded these peer dependencies. Your yarn lock will have that as well. And in the progen file, the dependencies here will also be upgraded wherever, there it is. Yeah. So back to here. Taking a look at the source code, we're not actually focusing on how to design anything today, so I'm kind of making a fake little construct here. But we will say, whoops. Extends construct. So all constructs extend the core construct library. Yeah, and this isn't really going to do anything, but I also need to make the test work here. We're not even going to use this. This is going to be the cheateriest method ever. Expect true to be true.
My kind of test.
Yeah.
Goes along with an empty commit message.
Never use this anywhere else. Anyway.
Pairs perfectly with an empty commit message,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just wanted to pass. I don't care about the test right now. Can't believe I'm saying that. And if you are one of our contributing community members, you also probably can't believe I'm saying that. So let's go ahead and build this. And what you're going to see pop up here in a moment is in more of a moment, an API markdown file will show up. There it is.
Nice. And
this auto-generates everything based off of what code we have here. I didn't add any docstring here, so I should have. Says.
Documentation and tests? I mean, come on, what are we?
We have a bot that makes sure you do all of that in our.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so this will update that in a second, and it's going to add anything that's in docstring. It'll add to the documentation here. So once this builds, I'm going to commit this again. Give it a second. Now, the tooling to publish for TypeScript is already built in here with one caveat. I'll get to that in a second. But if you want to publish to any other languages, it's a very, very simple method for doing so. The first thing that we'll want to do is add, whoops, that autocomplete is really important here. Wait, what is that command? Am I misremembering this? Perfect timing to misremember one of the commands. Anyway, typically you're going to want to add this dry run command for it so that you're not accidentally publishing. However, that won't actually become a concern until you have credentials set up, so I'll skip that for the moment. So we're going to do just .NET and Python today. So you'll do a publish.
Solid choices.
To, why isn't it adding these in automatically? That's fine. Publish to NuGet. And we'll need a .NET namespace, which is construct lib and package ID. also construct lib. All right, so once you've added these, and for the sake of time, I'll actually just go ahead and do this one. I'm gonna build again here. Oh wait, I said I was gonna save first. Now I'll build. So what you'll see this time is, in addition to everything it did before, a dist folder is going to appear. And then you'll also see some changes in our configurations here that add publishing settings. So is this, we'll give that a minute.
Okay.
Now, while that is building, because it'll take a second, I'm going to switch back over here and just give the caveat that I was talking about earlier is that you will need to set up certain keys. And you can go to publib, the link is in the corner, to figure out or find out how to set these up. We provide that information.
We had a question from chat about code artifact too. Instead of publishing to public, package distribution like NPM or NuGet, can you target code artifact?
You can. So we have a variety of different ways to publish. This is, if you want it in Construct Hub, publicly, right, then this is the path to take. But if you take a look at Progen and Publib, there's several different paths that you can take in terms of using our toolchain and still publishing, both publicly and privately. Yeah.
I'll drop that link in chat for you.
Okay. So let's see if that.
It's nice of you to do that.
There we go. So this finished publishing or building, and now you're going to see a folder for each of these. And now I'll release, and the release is going to fail intentionally.
No credentials, right?
Not for that.
Not for that.
What it will fail on is we have a safeguard in here that if you try and release with any uncommitted changes, it will always fail it.
Oh.
And that's so that you're not accidentally releasing. If you put your elbow on the keyboard and hit release, don't want that.
No.
So yeah, this is going to fail. It'll take a minute to get there, but I'm also going to talk about, we'll add in here a change log, and obviously there's no changes because we haven't released anything yet. Release tags and a version. There we go. And when it fails, it'll tell you what all of the uncommitted changes here are. So, don't accidentally publish those.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have mentioned a few resources here. So I just want to kind of summarize the various things that I talked about.
Perfect timing, too. We're running short.
So if you are brand new to the CDK Workshop is a fantastic resource. And our AWS landing page has links to a ton of other resources, including talks we've done, bunch of documentation. If you would like to contribute to us, here are a few of our major projects. If you're new, look for Good First Issue and make sure you read our contributing guide. We have some pretty specific requirements listed in there. And then if you are looking for CDK libraries for other things, Construct Hub. That was the link to the self-publishing credentials there in Publib. And if you want to engage with our wider community, go to cdk.dev. This is a community-run site, and there is such fantastic support there. There's a Slack channel that's run by them, and a whole lot of just community-written resources.
And it's very active too. It's a very active Slack channel. It is, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those of us who are on the team engage in there a lot as well. I pop in all the time. So, if you're in that Slack channel, hey.
And if you're not, go join.
Yeah, if you're not, go in there so you can say hey to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all for me. Yeah.
Incredible. You're incredible, Kendra. Thank you so much for coming on the show.